Ryan Stanton here with ASEP Frontline, and today we are here, I'm almost at the end, but Accelerate here in San Diego. Early morning for me, still trying to get accustomed to from the East Coast side of things, but talking with Dr. Edward Barthell, emergency physician, but also somebody who lives in the technology space. Has done incredible work coming in with Cedar EMDI. And there's interesting aspects that are coming about right now. An idea with EMDI that was, I think, ahead of its time just because of the utilization of the data, and now technology with AI is getting there. So we'll talk about that in a minute, but Ed, give us a little bit of background on yourself.
Sure, thanks. First of all, thanks for having me here. I'm also letting the coffee kick in, so I'll try to keep my speech clear. My background is I'm an emergency doc. I trained in Wisconsin. Frankly, didn't think I'd be practicing in Wisconsin, but a group of us came out of our emergency medicine residency, started to practice there locally, and it grew from 4 of us coming out together as residents to 250 employees. Became a regional democratic group servicing, when I left the practice, 22 hospitals. I was involved with ASEP from the very early days with what we call the computer section. Launched that computer section with some other colleagues at ASEP. And then pretty quickly we got a large grant from DARPA of the Defense Department to envision the emergency department of the future. So this was in the early 90s. We had a big display at the ASEP Scientific Assembly in 93 and 94. And the computer section kind of took off, and it really helped me finance an IT group within my physician practice group to work on interesting things. We developed a notification system for diversions of ambulances that was then marketed through to hospital associations in metropolitan areas. Did real well with that, spun it off to private equity eventually. Turned out to be an interesting adventure. And then based off of that, realized a lot of lessons learned on developing technology companies within physician practices. Then moved from there to Microsoft Health Solutions Group for a number of years. Then started a company called EMDI, which uses telehealth for teletriage and other use cases to help speed patient flow in emergency departments. In the last couple of years, I've now been helping out ASEP with the Emergency Medicine Data Institute, trying to get it on solid footing and start taking advantage of the incredible data asset that has been accumulated within ASEP.
And to get the idea, Cedar, the data registry for ASEP, that is one that was developed with regard to MIPS, that looking at ensuring the proper reporting, that we designed that what we're asking for, the actual asks, and then ensuring that docs are as successful as possible. Started early. There's been a lot of offshoot things because of COVID and everything else, but still at this point it is something that is active within our practices now. In fact, I just got our email yesterday from our practice management group to see where we're going to stand. Looks like we're going to be all right with our reporting. But then the EMDI was a secondary creation with the idea that all of this healthcare data, producing, everybody says that if the specialty is a specialty when you're really producing your own research and information and data. And with this data we had from millions of cases of emergency physicians that were being reported in, of being able to actually functionalize that and turn it into something productive for research purposes, for screening purposes, of course, with government-based asks on some trends and things within emergency medicine. The challenge has been that actually organizing and functionalizing the data, the sheer volume of data, has been very difficult. So talk about that path of when you came in a couple years ago with just this sheer massive amount of unorganized data, like millions of pieces of paper thrown into a dumpster with no organization or being able to sort it out, and how do you get it to something that is usable?
So this all dates to the 2015 legislation that was passed called MACRA, which is the federal government effort to pay for value in healthcare and not just for volume of care. And so part of that was an incentive program that said your Medicare payments will be linked to the reporting of specific quality measures, and your payments can be impacted plus or minus 9% in any given year. There's very specific criteria on how to report these quality measures. It has to be reported through a approved organization that CMS gives the blessing to. ACEP created that organization called CEDAR, the Clinical Emergency Data Registry, and has run it since 2015. It's grown over those years. Last couple of years, we've brought in data on 23 to 24 million emergency encounters from across the country, about 700 different hospitals. So when we have a participating physician group that wants to participate with CEDAR and submit their scores to CMS for the MIPS program, we put software into their hospitals with their providing services and extract out from the database level of their EMR a whole range of data points. We do the same thing then for the physician's billing practice. So bring in and extract out those data points and put them into the registry. That data comes in raw form with incredible diversity. Different hospitals, even though they're all on Epic or Cerner or one of the major brands of EMR, they customize the way they manage their data. So by the time it comes into us in raw form, they have custom codes or specific ways they organize that data, and so we have to somehow get it from that raw form into a normalized and harmonized data lake, we call it, to be able to then calculate the MIPS scores, how they met or did not meet those quality measures, and then put a composite score together that gets reported to CMS. In the process of doing that, we've created this huge data lake of data that can also be used for other purposes, as you said, for supporting other quality initiatives and supporting clinical research, et cetera.
And now, what was the challenge? This is something that, President-elect now, board member for the 6 years prior, the challenge of these, the expectation and promises that we had before that this would able to be, the data would be usable for research and to actually support the future of emergency medicine research data and inquiry. What were the challenges that existed from the time EMDI came about until almost right now, where we're finally getting to the point where we've got technology and AI that can assist?
That mapping exercise to get from that raw data that comes in with all that different diverse data fields and structures and getting it into a harmonized and normalized data structure that we can easily access for other purposes. That is a big transition. It has historically been very labor intensive, and the technical tools to do that were more limited. We're now finding artificial intelligence can be used to help us with that process. Up till now, we have not extracted data directly from clinical notes, the big text-based encounter notes that a doctor typically will do. At the end of my visit, I say, okay, Sally Jones came in with this problem. We did these tests. We did these treatments. This is my medical decision-making. This is my diagnosis disposition. That's in a big, we call it a blob of text. We haven't even used that up till now because we've only been using structured data, which are things like billing codes or other coded type data elements that we can pull out of the EMR. Now we're getting to the point where we can actually extract out directly from those big text notes using LLMs and other techniques, and gives us access to better data in a better form where it can be reused for other purposes.
All right, so that gets us up because you guys had a pretty big kind of release yesterday here, and now getting into the large language models and the kind of getting into this data, AskEMDI. So talk about how that's developed now and what it means for the future of EMDI and for emergency medicine-based access to data and research.
Another one of the struggles is when you have this data lake full of interesting data from millions and millions of encounters, is how do you then ask a question and get an answer to your question based on that data? And up to now, there's been one or a few of the employees at EMDI for ACEP that would get questions from either staff members or or physician members of the college, and they would have to write SQL queries and dive into the data. And so you'd ask a question, and maybe 2 weeks later you get an answer from the specialist that can query the database. We wanted to make that way more self-service, and with these newer chatbots and the AI techniques you can use, we've now put a chatbot front end on the data registry. We first extracted out a big set of data, de-identified it all, but then put the chatbot front end on it. And the AI tools that behind the chatbot take your natural language question, something like, how often does pulmonary embolus get diagnosed in emergency patients? You can type that in your natural language, and it pops up the answer and says, out of 23 million visits, here's the specific number that ended up with that diagnosis.
And why is that important? Because, I mean, you mentioned to me last night when we were talking about it, with regard to the existing research data, the trials, the size of the trials, things like that, versus now this large data lake.
Yep. Gold standard we've all grown up on as believing is the way to answer questions in medicine is double-blind clinical trials that get published in the literature. And we're all supposed to pay attention to that and answer our questions through that mechanism. And there's chatbot tools that are well recognized. I'm sure people use them sometimes in their practice where they can search the medical literature to help answer questions. Clinical trials generally are constrained in terms of the number of patients. They tend to, maybe it's 100 patients, 200 patients, whatever the number is. And those populations are studied very carefully. And inevitably, those trials have a disclaimer at the end when they discuss their data and their results that says, we don't know if this trial and the results we got is generalizable to the overall population. These new tools now that can access millions and millions of encounters can say, is it generalizable or not? So I might have 4 different trials that say pulmonary embolus happens somewhere between 30 and 60% of the time in a certain situation. And now I can say, all right, what's the specific number? And I can query 23 million visits and in a flash get the actual number and not have to be worrying on ranges or different trials with different study populations.
And it's interesting to me because the argument could be is that, well, we don't know the consistency of the data, the documentation, the diagnostics, potential misses, things like that. But honestly, what it is a query of actual emergency medicine.
Right.
It's the query of what we really did. So even if it is tainted or dirty in a way, it is actually the way that it actually is really practiced, as opposed to a controlled trial that has everything theoretically, and then you have to look in to say, well, who did we leave out? Where is the variables? How many sites were involved? All those different things, versus saying, okay, this is a national poll of everything that exists on this data. Because I've actually gotten a lot of asks about the treatment of, I've worked with a lot of the sickle cell organizations, and looking at some of that aspect of things, and that was an ask. And as of a year and a half, 2 years ago, they couldn't get that data.
Right.
And now that is the opportunity they can dive in and get that data. So what is the access now? You mentioned it's just been released, it's very early, but kind of give us the path going forward.
Yeah, and let me start by saying, I'm not saying that real world data, RWD is the acronym you'll see a lot, is better than clinical trials, or vice versa. I think it's just 2 different ways to try to answer questions, and they can actually be complementary.
Correct, especially if
I wanted to make sure,
especially if they get to the same page.
Yeah, ideally, that's where we're going. Okay, so the alpha version of this chatbot tool is out. We've got about 20 people that are starting to kind of bang on it and try to break it and continue to improve it. We anticipate moving to a beta version in about 2 weeks. So we've been recruiting folks here at the conference to sign up for the beta version. We encourage ACEP members to contact us at the Data Institute to sign up to be beta users. There's no cost involved. All we ask is that you give us feedback. If you can break the system, great. Give us feedback on how you broke it, and we can fix it then. And then we expect more of a general availability where it'll be also offered to non-ACEP members sometime in the spring, after we've had 3 months or so of really trying to bang on it and improve it.
Well, that's still pretty impressive. I mean, when you say, well, we're in the alpha version, but we expect to be in beta, and when you said that initially last night, I was like, yeah, by mid-year, by the end of the year, or something like that. Yeah, by 2 weeks. And I mean, that's the amazing aspect of technology and AI now, is that
things are moving fast.
They move so fast. Yeah. And how do you think, in terms of potential uses, because I know there's a lot of asks for ACEP and others with regard to, say, CDC and FDA and other large, looking at some of the population monitoring, not in terms of the monitoring that some people think about, conspiracy theorists, but in terms of the monitoring of disease processes and things like that. How do you think this will be functional for those out there that are within the research world?
We think that's one of the places we can really play a role. Our data is relatively timely, not quite real time yet, but each quarter we anticipate having updates so that we know how things are evolving quarter by quarter. And over time, we anticipate moving more and more to real-time reporting. Many of the classic federal agency data sets that have been available to researchers lag 2 or 3 years after the fact. So in 2022, you could say, there might be a pandemic breaking out, which isn't always as helpful. But there are going to be applications, I think, with CDC and some of the other federal agencies that have all had funding cuts and are looking for new ways to do the business that they're doing. And then for academic researchers, we see this chatbot tool being something that's useful, especially for scoping out a project. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of thinking about doing a project on sickle cell. I'm looking about these things I'd like to investigate more. How many patients would I need to recruit? How available is the data? What are the baseline frequencies of XYZ treatment? All those types of questions can be answered as you plan your research project. And then ACEP has historically and will continue to provide custom data extracts from the registry for researchers for very specific purposes that would have details in it that we wouldn't even have behind the chatbot.
Well, even looking on the page now for ACEP members especially, and this is just early, the initial splash page, it's going to be something that is going to be so much more reasonably priced than any other data warehouse that's out there. Being an ACEP member, everybody's going to come to you to ask for your. Well, don't give away your password, but ask for your assistance in getting access to the data, because it is going to be on the cheap. Very affordable as a member benefit. And then, if you're out there right now, you're an ACEP member and you want to help us help break EMDI. Contact us and we'll get you that set up on that. I will actually post this on, it looks like Monday, 25th or so, 26th. If everybody, especially for everybody that's on the East Coast, you're dealing with a snowstorm right now. Maybe I'll do it Saturday, the 24th, because that'll be when all of us are dealing with that snowstorm and ice storm. So you have time to think about it and get on there and try to break it, because you have nothing better to do. And unless you're like me and you're going to be working. So how can folks get involved and kind of contact to be part of the wrecking crew?
First of all, acep.org/EMDI. Mm-hmm. And you can find links there, or you can go /AskEMDI. That will get you there. You can use, I'm happy to give out my own email address, ebarthell, EBARTHELL, @acep.org. You can write to me directly. I'm happy to try to get folks hooked up to be one of the participants and give us some feedback on how we can improve the tooling.
All right, talking with Dr. Ed Barthell. You do the H a little bit more than I do. Say it again.
Ed Barthell.
Barthell. So I think I've spent 2 years just using the T and letting the H hide out in silence. So Ed Barthell with us here. Fantastic. I appreciate everything that you've done for EMDI and helping move this forward. And really, for us from the leadership standpoint, kind of seeing the sun come up over the horizon in terms of the potential of what was envisioned of this when it was created by those that were just a little bit ahead of their time. So I appreciate your time and being here, and excited to see what's next, and for ACEP and the EMDI to be on the leading edge of the AI movement, and appreciate everything.
Okay, thanks for having me.
As for me, contact me at rstant@acep.org, rstant@acep.org, at EverydayMed on X. I also ask that you subscribe to the podcast on whatever your favorite player is. We're all over the place, so whatever the favorite one you like, you can find us. And and subscribe. If you do have one that I don't know about and you enjoy, feel free to send it my way, and we'll get the podcast on that platform as well. But all the major ones are there. Send us a 5-star review, help boost us up a little bit. And until next time, I'm Dr. Ryan Stanton, and this has been some ACEP Frontline.
If you're not on the front lines, you're on the sidelines.
Cue the music.
Bow, bow, bow.
Dinger. Quiet place, all
Yeah.
alone. Da, da, da.